Democratic senators have doggedly been pursuing Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas over undisclosed gifts that he's received from his billionaire friends. And now, a new trip that Clarence Thomas took, paid for by his rich friend, has been revealed, and it wasn't disclosed on his financial disclosure forms. And this time, Democratic senators have a new strategy that definitely has Clarence Thomas and his friends sweating bullets. I'll tell you guys all about it coming right up. Ever since ProPublica published an article last year detailing 20 years of corruption by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the Senate Democrats have been looking into his affairs. This includes an RV loan that was forgiven worth around $267,000 and luxury trips paid for by billionaires on private planes and staying at fancy resorts. Clarence Thomas was supposed to declare these kind of gifts on his financial disclosure forms that all Supreme Court justices have to file each year. Now, he has since gone back and revised some of those forms, but only under public pressure. And that has led President Biden to announce a series of reforms to the Supreme Court. That includes a code of ethics that Supreme Court justices would have to live by, because why is the highest court in the land held to the lowest ethical standards? And it would also have term limits for Supreme Court justices, 18 years as opposed to life, and it would get rid of presidential immunity through a constitutional amendment. It's sad that President Biden has to even put forward these sort of reforms. You'd think the Supreme Court would want to hold themselves to a high standard. This also led to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez putting forward articles of impeachment for Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. These articles of impeachment are directly related to these gifts that they've been receiving and not disclosing on their financial disclosure forms. This apparent corruption by Clarence Thomas is so astonishing that last month, Senators Ron Wyden and Sheldon Whitehouse sent a letter to the DOJ asking them to appoint a special counsel to look into the possible criminal conduct of Clarence Thomas. And now, another trip has been revealed that Clarence Thomas did not report on his financial disclosure forms. Look at this article from the New York Times. Justice Clarence Thomas failed to publicly disclose additional private travel provided by the wealthy conservative donor Harlan Crow, a top Democratic senator said in a letter on Monday. Customs and Border Protection records revealed that the justice and his wife, Virginia Thomas, took a round trip between Hawaii and New Zealand in November 2010 on Mr. Crow's private jet, according to the letter. Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, writing to Mr. Crow's lawyer, demanded that he supply more information about the financial relationship between the two men. We've heard about similar types of trips where Clarence Thomas accepted free travel from his friend on his private planes and stayed for free at resorts, so that may not raise any eyebrows. But in this case, the senator's strategy is a bit different from what we've seen before. You can see in the letter from Senator Ron Wyden to Harlan Crow's attorney, he's asking him for more information. So Democrats are shifting gears here, and they're not asking Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to clarify his relationship. They're now going after the person that was paying for these trips for him, and listen to the reasoning behind that. In a letter sent from Senator Wyden on the Committee on Finance's letterhead from the U.S. Senate, he wrote the following to Harlan Crow's attorney. Thank you for your February 29th letter on behalf of your client, Harlan Crow, replying to requests for information related to the Senate Committee on Finance's investigation into the tax treatment of the use of Mr. Crow's super yacht and private aircraft. Unfortunately, your evasive response has only heightened my concerns that Mr. Crow and his associates were involved in a scheme to avoid paying taxes by claiming business deductions on personal travel. In particular, your response did not address the simple question of whether Mr. Crow claimed any tax deductions on expenses related to yacht and private aircraft use by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas that you have stated were for personal hospitality. So Clarence Thomas claims that he did not have to disclose these trips because they were just personal hospitality, meaning a friend giving a friend a lift or a free hotel room. There was no business involved. So what Senator Wyden is doing is now trying to squeeze Harlan Crow, the billionaire friend of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, to see if he actually deducted the cost associated with these trips for tax reasons. And if he did deduct these costs on his taxes, well, that could be seen as tax fraud if Clarence Thomas did not disclose them on his financial disclosure forms. Or Clarence Thomas would have to go back and revise his forms and say, oh, oops, I didn't realize that my friend giving me a lift on his private jet was actually a business meeting, and I should have recused myself from all things related to that guy in the Supreme Court. Senator Wyden points out in the letter that a business associated with chartering out this yacht has been claiming a loss for years in order to write off business expenses for tax purposes. But the yacht has never been chartered to anyone in the public, only to family, friends, and close business associates of Mr. Harlan Crow. Check out this portion of the letter. For example, according to reports, Rochelle Charter reported losses for more than 10 years, each year from 2003 to 2015, while it was still organized as an S corporation, racking up $8 million in losses during that period. In turn, those losses were then used to help Mr. Crow avoid paying millions in taxes by offsetting income. It remains unclear whether Rochelle Charter ever turned a profit during that period, and how Rochelle Charter's gross income compared to its losses over the same period. Additionally, it remains unclear what business income supports Mr. Crow's efforts to write off $1.8 million worth of expenses, including renovations in 2014. Simply put, a business owner with a genuine profit motive would not operate a business at a loss for more than a decade with no potential for growth and no discernible effort to turn a profit. So Senator Wyden is putting the pressure on billionaire friend Harlan Crow of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, claiming that these personal hospitality trips may have been written off as tax expenses. So he wants copies and proof of his tax records to show that that's not the case, and he's calling him out for deducting millions of dollars in expenses related to this business that charters out his yacht only to family, friends, and close business associates. That's not a real business. That's you just helping out your friends as a gift and then cheating taxes and writing it off. So now the pressure is being put on the billionaire Harlan Crow and not Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. This might actually lead to some pay dirt because a private citizen is nowhere near as powerful as somebody on the Supreme Court. Let's keep an eye on what else Senator Wyden does as Democrats continue to ramp up the pressure on this corrupt Supreme Court.